for a long time, and then ended up in maintenance, got to know all the crew chiefs, all the maintainers very well, and worked my way up. And something I cherish more than anything else right now is the chief plaque that they gave me. They gave me a chief's bust, is what it is. And Chief Master Sergeant, it's the E9, it's the highest rank in the enlisted corps, and it's a beautiful bust of a Indian chief with a very nice plaque on the bottom of it. And I know exactly where he's coming from. So that gives you an indication of who this guy was also. So thanks so much for being here, I'll say that right now, and allowing us, guys like this, to honor your dad.
Absolutely.
I think it's
Absolutely.
it's spectacular.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the restoration. There's two guys over there, Eric and Eric, who had a lot to do with it. And hey, give me the highs, the lows. It was 8 years or so. Is that about right? How many years did it take?
Well, like Bruce said, we had the airplane at our shop for several years. We worked hard on it since we finished the restoration of Lope's Hope, a P-51C model we restored. After that point, we worked hard on the P-47, and it's a huge, massive project. It's not a P-51, we can tell you that much. Lots of parts. There's over 40,000 parts in the P-47. That doesn't include the engine, the propeller, any of the instruments and things like that. And we have an amazing team at Air Corps. Lots of parts, of course, were fabricated for the restoration, but many parts were reused from the original airplane. The team up on the screen there, and we've added several since, and some people just have joined the team recently and got to experience the finish, and some of them been through the whole project, and it's really a monumental task restoring an airplane. Every rivet in the airplane, every piece has been disassembled, and it's just amazing and exciting to see the airplane fly again for the first time and help tell the story. And we really get to tell more and hear more of the stories. So that's what it's all about.
I understand there's some signatures on it also. And can you talk to it, or should Chuck talk to it?
Yeah, maybe Chuck.
Same author that helped me connect with Margot. I connected with a general who was at the time 99, DeWitt Searles, and he had been with the 460th. He had, not immediately, but he ended up commanding the squadron about a month after Bill Dunham left the 460th Squadron. So I talked to him for several hours on he was magnanimous enough to take my call. And I said, I think Eric suggested that maybe he'd sign the access door. And so I asked him if he was willing, and we shipped it to him, and he signed it. Then we contacted another P-47 pilot that was still with us from Minnesota, and he signed it too. And then Huey Lang signed a different access panel, and there is a pilot step that comes from a P-47 that Hans Waronka find. It was his uncle, right? And they excavated that airplane, and that pilot handle is part of this one. So there's 4 people that it honors, kind of besides Bill Dunham.
Wow.
Hans is here today, isn't he?
Huh? Yes, Hans is here someplace.
Yeah.
There he is.
All right, let's talk about the airplane performance. And we've got an expert over there and an expert over here. And I'll just say, Bernie just goes like that. I'll talk to you first, Bernie. What do you think about, you went through engine testing with it, you did your first flights with it, good, bad, ugly, any big problems, fly as expected, good performance, etc.?
It was, I've flown other P-47s, and I told this story a few times. Propeller, engine, this airplane's original. It's got a 50-spline propeller. Some of the 50-spline propeller parts, there's none out there. Eric and his team sourced the Curtiss Electric, but the guys want to run HEM standards for whatever reason. So they take a late model engine, bolt it on an early model engine. A couple things designed for the airplane. It might not be the right length, But the big thing is it doesn't turn as fast. Later airplanes, you turn the propeller slower, turn the engine RPM up, you get more brake horsepower, but it's slower to accelerate. So during the test flight, first flight, we briefed it all up. I'm going to get on the runway, hold 30 inches. Warren was behind me in a Mustang. Him and Ben came down. I said, tell me when to release the brakes. I'll run the power up to 45. It's really slow. They're really big cylinders. So it's a lot of hydraulic fluid moving. And a Mustang goes, we're all used to seeing whack, and it's done. This thing, it takes some time. And the whole time you're trying to accelerate, that's a lot of drag. So I briefed this whole thing up, and I totally lied. Because everything I said, none of it happened. I ran it to 30 inches. So these two things happened. I ran it to 30 inches. He said go. I went to 45, and it went, and I got the gear coming up, and I started a turn, and I told him we're going to be 500 feet, a quarter mile from the airport. We're going to drag this thing back around, and it's going to take 2 circles to get to 3,000 feet. I turned around and looked for him. I'm like, hey, are you going to catch me and look at this thing and make sure it's not leaking? And he said, I had Mito power on that thing. I couldn't catch you. And it just, up it went. So having all the original stuff helps.
Yeah.
It really does.
How about landing? You've landed a variety of these Warbirds. Easy, hard, compared to say T6, P-51. In between, is it pretty docile?
Yes, it's a docile airplane. It's got a really wide gear, but the biggest thing is it's heavy, and you're landing really fast compared to what you are in a Mustang or a T6. And the heavier they get, the faster you have to land them. But it's just physics. So getting used to that, but handling characteristics on the ground are really, really nice. And maybe somebody can correct me, but I think this is the only Air Corps airplane to have a locking tail wheel. Is that, to my knowledge? I don't think any other of the Air Force-ish airplanes had locking tail wheels. So you lock it, and it's stuck going straight. It's real wide. It's long. So it's really stable on the ground.
Good. I'm interested in talking to our other pilot now, too. How about, what's your impression, Jerry, of flying that airplane? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did you really enjoy it? You had, 60-some missions in combat with the thing. I'm sure you had a lot more training, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you think of flying the airplane?
When you just graduated from flying school and they check you out at a P-40 in order to let you know how fast an airplane can really go, and then they put you in a P-47, it's a different world. But first, I think I might want to tell you how I got into the Air Force. I was 15 years old. I was living on Long Island, and a new newspaper came out, and they decided that in order to let the newspaper, which is Newsday, be successful, they assigned certain sections of the county to people to get subscriptions. So in a little area where I was located, I got the most subscriptions, and the winner was a prize. And the prize was a flight from Mitchell Field, Long Island, over New York City. Well, here we are. I'm flying over New York City, and I made a decision. From now on, I am going to be a pilot.
All right.
Right. Now I'll go on. I'm 18 years old, and I decided I'd join the Air Force because World War I is now in its first year. And I went down to the Naval Air Force Recruiting Agency because I could think of nothing more exciting than trying to land a plane on a boat that is bobbling up and down in the ocean. Well, I went to the Navy recruiter, gave him all of my information, and after about 15 minutes of discussion, he said, "I'm sorry, but we can't take you." I was heartbroken. So I went across the street to the Army Air Force. At that time, it wasn't the Air Force, it was the Army Service, whatever it was.
Army Air Corps, that's right.
Army Air Corps, right. And I went down and they interviewed me. And after the interview, the guy said, "Okay, now go on to the medical supply doctor and let him examine you." So I went into his office. He examined me and he said, "I'm terribly sorry, but we can't take you." I was so disappointed. I said, "Why?" He said, "When you were a kid, evidently you had your ears pierced several times and you could never take high altitude flying." Just at that time, a telephone rang and he had to leave the office. So I stood up and I looked on his desk and I saw the sheet of paper that had to be passed on to the next doctor. I took a pen and scribbled something where his name was supposed to be. I took it to the next doctor, and that's how I got into the Air Force. So I'll tell you about one of my experiences with a P-47. We were stationed in Pocatello, Idaho, and Pocatello, Idaho is rimmed by lava beds. Well, I took off on this baby, and I had two 500-pound bombs on the wings, and as I'm taking off and I get to be about 100 miles an hour, and I realize I'm never going to make it. So I pull the wheels as fast as I can, dump my bombs, and before I know it, bam! The plane hits the lava field. All of this time, I'm holding the nose up, thinking I'm going to make a nice, easy belly landing. I hit the ground so hard that the engine separated from the fuselage and traveled another 50 yards in front of me. And the only thing I could think of was, there's got to be a fire because all of that fuel is sitting under me. I jumped out of the airplane, looked aside, and the only thing I got out of that was a concussion. But 2 days later, I was flying again. So, my experience with that baby was that it could take anything. Then there was you want to hear a couple of war stories?
One war story. We'll give you one war story, then we're going to do a walk around with Bernie.
Okay, one more war story. Okay. Put your hands on a knee, fold your thumb under your palm, and make believe that those are the 4 50 caliber machine guns that are sitting in the wing. Okay, we're out flying, we're doing a strafing job, and we're coming off at about 130 miles an hour, and for some reason I look left, and there is a whole line of tracer bullets coming up to me. And tracer bullets, of course, are those things where you can see every bullet that's fired, and it's fired from a machine gun on the ground. This tracer line comes up, and it starts approaching my number 4 50 caliber machine gun casing, and about 4 inches away from the wing edge, it stops. you ever hear the story of the whole 9 yards? Well, when a machine gun armament is set up, the band is 9 yards longer, and those 9 yards are filled with whatever ammunition is used. 2 inches before hitting the leading edge of my plane, it rained out of 9 yards of firing, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here. Now, there were other things that happened to me, and one of the reasons was my crew chief, after I told him the story about this escapade, he named my plane Mr. Lucky. Believe it or not, I never saw a German airplane. The only thing we did was strafing and bombing. And in all the time I was in service flying these things, the plane never got hit with anything. So when they call me Mr. Lucky, all of my life, I'm known as Mr. Lucky.
Wow. I think we could listen to those stories for a long time.
Yeah,
I
they will,
think.
yeah.
But I'm going to ask Bernie to
How
do
you
just a
feeling?
quick walk around here and talk a little bit about the airplane, the hardware, so to speak. So, Bernie, you got it.
Well, we've already talked about the propeller. One of the cool things about this particular propeller is it's hollow. So they're steel hollow blades. That's an external cuff. The intake houses a whole bunch of stuff. You've got air going all the way back to the turbocharger, around the turbocharger to cool it, through an intercooler that cools the air after the turbocharger compresses it, comes back up, goes into the engine, which is a Pratt & Whitney 2800. It has a blower in it as well. So it's got 2 blowers. Some of the Pratt & Whitney engines had a shifting capability, so you'd turn the blower slower down low. When you get to high altitude, you'd shift it, go to the granny high gear, and it would turn faster to compress more air. When they designed this airplane, just put a secondary blower back there, run off the exhaust. So you've also got 2 ducts for the oil coolers, which come out here.
What was the horsepower? Probably 2,300, something like that?
What's a 59W? 23, 24?
Okay.
Wet.
All right.
Yeah.
So 2,300 horsepower. Something
Yeah,
like that.
so one of the things about this engine as well, and one of the reasons they were able to do what they did with it, with the blower, was it has a gigantic, like 50, how big's the water tank? So 15, 20 gallons of what we call ADI. It's anti-detonation and injection, and what that is it's water and alcohol that they spray right into the intake that cools the charge. If the air going into the engine's too hot, it'll detonate. You only get a couple of those, and then the pistons start flying out, and it makes metal, and all kinds of bad stuff happens. So they had a button on the throttle that when they were going a really high boost, they turn that on, and it'd inject water right in there, and it'd cool it off. Well, then you had the air going through the intercooler, which an intercooler does the same thing, but it's taking air going through a radiator-looking device
to cool it.
and the air coming out of the compressor cools it. So it's an air-to-air deal. Here, most people think this is where the exhaust comes out, because in most airplanes, that is where the exhaust comes out. That's not where all of the exhaust comes out of this airplane. This actually moves, and it's a wastegate, so it'll close and port all the exhaust back to the turbo to make it spin faster to compress more. So when you're at high altitude, you take that boost lever, and it actually closes this off. But there's always exhaust going back there, so that turbo's always turning. And one of the cool things about a P-47 is it's got 2 RPM gauges. One's in thousands, so when it's pointing to 10, it's 10,000 RPM. The other one's in hundreds, so the other one's engine speed. The other one that's in thousands it's actually got a deal on there to give you the RPM. And you can overspeed it. You can you have to set it, and that's basically, you got another little lever over here. a mini throttle. So that was what was very unique about their design philosophy on that. The struts on this thing are pretty cool. They're 2 chambers. So as it sits here, there's 300 pounds of air on this side. But when the gear goes up, it has to collapse again to get in this hole. So there's a bar here that pushes a lever all inside the strut, and it pushes on a Schrader valve, and that air in here now transfers up here, and it equalizes it. So as the gear goes up, this thing gets shorter again, goes in here. However, if that fails and the gear pops back with full pressure, you're gonna belly land the airplane. It won't come out of the well.
Yeah.
Of course, we have the 4 machine guns that he spoke of, and apparently it stopped like right there, his whole 9 yards. They did have the ability to carry tanks. We didn't put any of that stuff in this airplane. You know, they could carry a 500-pound bomb. They could center drop tank for more fuel. This airplane's pretty unique where it has what we call a Christmas tree tank. So behind the bulletproof armor, there's an actual another tank that resembles a Christmas tree. That's why they call it that. And they stuff fuel in there too. So as he was talking about, you know, you're sitting on all this fuel. This one, you're kind of surrounded by all the fuel.
And you were talking about, you know, the load. How much, I mean, could you carry, say, 2 500-pound bombs? I mean, it was more a strafer than anything else, but it still dropped bombs. And how many, you know, would you
they would put 1 on each wing.
Okay.
And then, or, you know, 1 underneath.
Okay.
I don't know that they ever carried any bombs underneath. I know they had tanks.
Right.
Did they have rockets too?
Okay, so
Yep.
they
Yeah,
shot
so it
rockets.
had a belly tank. They could hang rockets on the wings, bombed in the center.
Okay.
Ailerons are really cool. This was something that I find fascinating because I like airplanes and I fly little aerobatic airplanes. But the aileron design, when it goes down, the air strikes it here. And I thought, like, they did that in the 80s. They thought that was a new thing. This was like 30 whatever. They already had the freeze aileron. So and one of the cool things about this airplane is when you're flying it, it's pretty light on the controls, but the further you go, the lighter it gets. You get to the last part of the throw here, and I think you could just let go of it and it just keep on rolling because it's got that deal. It's like a spade. So big giant flaps. It's heavy. It's, as they say, it's the heaviest airplane that they flew. So it's got big barn door flaps. Pretty cool design. They actually go out and then down, which increases the wing area. So it was ahead of its time by a lot. I mean, it was designed real early and used quite a bit.
Bernie, what kind of speed over the fence typically?
Typically, you're going to shoot 120 down final and then come over the fence at 115, 110. This is the intercooler door, so you close this if you don't need to cool the air. This is just cooling air for the intercooler, providing the air back to the engine. You'll see an oil spot. The turbo has its own oil supply, which is in behind the rear seat. There's a tank. It's got its own pump. So when you start it, it starts pumping and it's returning oil through it. Completely separate system, so you have to check 2 different oil systems on the airplane, which is pretty unique. All of this shroud protects the turbo, and then all the other exhaust that's not coming out of the 2 little ports up front is coming out of here. And if you could see here, I don't know if you can get that camera up there, but there's a big ring with just a bunch of little vanes, and that's the turbine wheel that's turning the turbo. And then the rest of it's just big old giant airplane. One of the things about this particular airplane, and we spoke about it when we were talking about Thunderbird, having the high deck, the turtle deck, puts the air back together coming off of the canopy, and that's a huge amount of drag. There's a gigantic low pressure from that air going over the top of the canopy. So having this high back puts that back together, makes it more efficient, makes it faster. However, you got all these bars and stuff in your way to be able to see. So you can see why they went to the bubble style canopy on all the fighters to just give them the ability to be able to see the enemy.
Jerry, did you fly both? You flew both? Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
I flew this thing in World War II, and I was recalled for the Korean War, and that's when I flew the Bubble.
Okay. And
Did
what
you
was
have
your
a,
preference?
Did you have a preference?
Yeah.
Didn't make much difference, as long as it got up and down.
All right. Thank you for that. And I will now say questions. And I'll open the questions up for everybody here. So we've got, if you got owner questions, you got airplane performance questions, you got World War II questions, you got anything you want. And we've got some microphones out there, and I see all kinds of hands going up. So Bruce, you got one right there. Go ahead.
How come there's so many more P-51s than these aircraft now?
I bet Bruce could answer that question.
Well, that's a really good question, and I don't think I have a perfect answer to it, but I think that it just wasn't seen as valuable a plane as the Mustang, and so it got trashed along with a lot of the other ones. I mean, you remember seeing the pictures of P-40s just stacked up like cordwood with the engines off up on their noses and stuff. But Connie Boland shared a wonderful story with us this morning about from a gentleman that had been present right after the war when they were destroying the planes in the European theater, and that they were particularly destroying them with dynamite. And this guy said they'd put a stick of dynamite in each plane and just blow it up. And but with the as a testament to the sturdiness of these beasts, they would put 5 sticks of dynamite in, and whereas the ones that they'd put 1 stick in, they'd just blow up. The guy said, with the jug, they put 5 sticks of dynamite, and it would just go. So, you hear all the stories about how tough and sturdy these things were, coming back, just shot all to heck, or even the one with the guy that lost a wing and still brought it in. I thought that was actually the best testament I'd ever heard as to how built these were. Anyway, but I don't have a good story for it. Maybe you, Chuck, being the historian, would know why there's so few of these left.
They're expensive to operate,
Yeah.
and Mustangs were taken over by a lot of foreign air forces and maintained and flew for a long time. And there's a type certificate for a Mustang that's a little easier to register than a P-47.
Well, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fame of the Mustang. It finished the war. Everybody puts the war on its shoulders, and it was what every little kid at the time saw flying over. It was my generation's F-16. It was a single seat fighter. It was pointing in the front, pointing in the back. And I think they were still active even after the war ended, so there's just a bunch of them there. Yeah. These things probably all ended up in the scrapper by the time they were surplus and stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, next. Go ahead.
Does anybody know what happened to the Japanese pilot who got thrown in the Mae West?
We don't.
No. Sorry.
That would make a great story.
All right, we got a question over here on the right.
I would love to know
I got
where.
a question on the.
Oh, wait a minute.
I got a question on the Razorback model itself. Republic made the Razorback, and also it was licensed built by Curtiss, the P-47G.
Right.
How many of the Republic built are still in existence? And is there any fundamental difference between the D model Razorback and the Curtiss built G model?
I bet Chuck knows the answer to
this
that.
Is the only flying. And you have to be kind of specific because people always argue, oh, there's 2 other Razorbacks. There's 2 Razorbacks that are beautiful airplanes flying in California that were made by Curtiss, and they're G models. And Curtiss kind of got behind the ball, and by the time they were producing, Republic had moved up a couple more marks and had more performance and so forth. So the G models never left the United States, and that's why those 2 exist. This is the only Republic-built D model Razorback flying in the world?
Okay, answers that question. Next, there we go, upper left.
I have a question for Jerry. Jerry, where were you fighting in Europe? And where did you fly out of?
In Italy and the Balkans. And it was on the Adriatic side. But it may be of interest to all of you that after the war, we all expected they were going to be sent home. But we weren't. We were sent to Linz, Austria, which was a now German airport that was given up after the war. And the reason we went to Linz, Austria was that the people in government in the United States was sure that our fighter group was going to be the only area that would repel the Russians when the third war starts. And that's the history of the group.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow. All right, another question. There we go.
What are you burning for fuel in this one now?
100 low lead.
Do you have to derate the engine for that?
Yeah, we don't run rated what is rated takeoff power anymore. It would be 51 inches dry. We use 45.
What were they using during the war? What was the octane?
115, 145.
Okay. Okay. All right, another question.
Thank you for the family. Thanks for representing all the World War II veteran survivors. But I think it would be illustrative in this group, since it's we the people, how many survivors we have, like the two daughters here, whose fathers, not just the grandfathers, we could do that next, but fathers flew these in World War II.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's one. Oh, yep, one right there. Thank you. Another one over there. Here we go. We got more. That's pretty incredible. Thank you for that question. All right, another one. Go ahead.
Question over here is, will we see this airplane fly this week?
Yeah.
Bernie? Yeah.
Yeah. Bernie, you still here? Yeah.
I was sleeping, sorry. What do you say?
Will
Yeah,
we see
we did have a little bit of a maintenance issue. We're going to test fly it hopefully this afternoon during the air show.
Okay, wonderful. And if you all get a chance, come take a close walk around this airplane. I happened to see it while the EA judges were combing it the other day, and so I had the opportunity to look at it up close and personal. And I'll compliment Air Corps. It is spectacular. I mean, the rivets, you name it, everything is precise. I gotta say. You did another outstanding job.
I'm gonna second that and plug Air Corps a little bit. I think this is the fifth, I don't know, a few airplanes now. And particularly for me, this is like the fourth airplane I've test flown from either being brand new or rebuilt, new engine, something coming out of other shops, major restoration stuff, and it's pretty much perfect. We had a really good test flight program. They all have hiccups, but that crew goes above and beyond to make sure that it's 100% and it works. It's right before I get in it, before anybody gets in it. And we had a little maintenance issue this week, and my hat's off to them. They spent almost all of yesterday not only getting it here judged, looked at, loaded, cleaned, everything, but then they had to spend all day yesterday trying to fix our hiccup. And it was literally like the 11th hour. We got it out this morning and taxied over here. So just want to say thank you.
And I'll just say that I overheard a conversation with Air Corps And the one thing they said was there's a bunch of priorities in terms of getting these airplanes flying again. And you'll be glad to hear that the first priority is your butt, okay? So they want to make sure that butt gets down here again, and that's the way it should be. So I thank Air Corps for that.
My wife appreciates that, by the way.
All right, got a question up here.
I just want to thank you again for bringing this plane back. My dad flew with the 404th Fighter Group in Europe, and I just sent 2 pictures of this to a gentleman named Floyd Blair who lives in Ocala, Florida. I met him face to face this spring. He flew with my dad, and I sent him the pictures, and he said his airplane was never that clean.
Yeah. All right, we got a question over here on the right.
How soon after restoration did you fly it, and where will this be kept?
We flew it like literally the day the paperwork was finished and a restoration isn't just getting all the parts together to make that. You still have to go to the FAA, you still have to get registration. If you want to talk about hurdles for an airplane, we kind of had a lot of them. They won't register an airplane until it's an airplane. Well, we couldn't do any of the registration paperwork, so we got all done, and we went to registration. Well, there was this little thing called COVID, and nobody works anymore. They all are remote, so we had to go through the hurdles of that, and so it was done for a long time, but we were faced with paperwork issues, and then it has to get a stamp from a person that says it can fly and it is airworthy. So we got that, and it was the same day we started the flight test, and everything clicked. We had to fly a certain amount of hours off of it before you could leave a general area, so we had to fly it around Bemidji for 10 hours, and then we could take it to the paint shop, and it was just, everything clicked, and we weren't doing this just once. We were doing this for both airplanes that were in Warbirds in review today. Yeah. This cool aluminum big giant beast and that shiny blue silver bullet over there. So they were doing it on, and it was just back to back. We test fly this airplane, go get that one. They literally drove the airplane on a trailer from the shop, a wing and a fuselage for Thunderbird while I was test flying this. I show up, and here comes Mark Tissler in a pickup truck with a Mustang behind him, like it was not a big deal.
There's one thing that I'd like to add about that is that this plane is going to reside at the Dakota Territory Air Museum up in Minot, North Dakota. And I just want to say that the Dakota Territory Air Museum is really, in the last number of years, has really stepped forward in a big way in hosting all of our planes and having an incredible collection of vintage airplanes. And under the direction of Warren Pietsch and his crew, it's a real, even though it's up in Minot, it's a well worth the visit. It's an incredible place, and they have done a phenomenal job in hosting all of these Warbirds.
And it's not just Warbirds. There's
there's
everything
vintage,
from pre-teen airplanes to obviously this brand new thing will be there.
Yeah.
But it's a museum well worth going to if you like airplanes. There's a little bit of everything.
But you should call ahead if there's any particular plane you want to see, because it may not be there, because we have a commitment to flying these and sharing them with people. These are not hangar queens.
Yeah.
This
Thankfully,
thing is
Bruce
fly.
allows us to keep them going.
Yeah.
And they build the airplanes with the intent on them flying.
Yeah.
They're not just going to get pushed out and run and then pushed back inside.
Yeah.
All right, we got a little guy. We got the big guy. I saw the little guy first.
I was just wondering if you could comment upon the elliptical wing, what it did for.
The elliptical wing.
It's pretty.
Well, Spitfire had one too, right?
Yeah.
It's prettier.
Yeah.
It is. But yeah, I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody out here could explain the physics behind it. I just go like this. It could be square, it could be round.
Yeah, sorry. No good answer. Now we got the little guy over there. Go ahead.
How long ago did you finish this project?
2 months.
About a month and a half ago,
Yeah.
it flew for the first time.
Okay. Okay, outstanding. And we're glad you did finish it and glad that you were here. All right.
Yeah, these poor guys are going to need a vacation.
Yeah.
Go ahead. One more.
Good afternoon. I don't have a question so much as a comment. I had the opportunity to pick up Jerry, and he jumped into the Jeep as though he was a young, spry man. And we had the opportunity to get him in the aircraft, and he's not 99. I swear he's 20. He got up in that cockpit without missing a beat.
You didn't leave the keys in the airplane, did you?
Yeah,
I'm worried that, he'd probably crank that thing up.
Yeah.
Well, all right, any more? Oh, one more up the top.
My father hated flying the 47 because he said the turbo lag was so bad. And I wonder if you could adjust, any comment on that.
Well, the way they flew them, so there's a whole bunch of levers over here. A normal airplane has a throttle, a prop, and a mixture. This thing has a blower lever, supercharger, the turbo in the back, the throttle, the prop, and the mixture. And there's actually a way through some linkage on the actual levers that they would lock them all together, and it was automagic. You just ran the throttle, and the propeller went up with it, came back with it, the turbo came up, went back. Well, it's an oil-controlled butterfly valve that's got to do this. And I'm sure there was some turbo lag when they were up really high because they, like these things, they go click, and it's instant power. Those things, they go click and the burner turns on and they have instant acceleration, but you had to build up power in this, so.
Okay, I'm going to say thank you to everybody involved here. Bruce, I say thank you.
Thank you.
Margot, Shelley, Chuck, Bernie, the two Erics, and most importantly, and I'd like to finish, first of all, veterans. I want to see how many veterans we got in the crowd today. I do this on every performance. Please stand up if you're a veteran. Thank you for your service. And the last thank you I want to deliver to this gentleman right here and say, Jerry, thank you. Thank you for our freedom. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for being part of the greatest generation. So with that, I'll say, well done. And I hope you can come back next year.
Are they able to come down for questions?
Yeah, if you want to come down for questions or whatever, come on down. And yeah, these guys will be here to answer specifics if you want. Thank you very much for being here. Next show tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Tonight. That's right. Tonight at 6:30, 6:15, we've got a Super Connie presentation tonight. I'm not going to be doing it, though.
How to grow delicious tomatoes. Step 1. Feed them while watering with Miracle Grow liquid feed. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow. How to grow more vibrant flowers. Step 1. Feed them with Miracle Grow Shake and Feed. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow. How to grow delicious herbs. Step 1. Use Miracle Grow potting mix. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow.
Today, we are pleased to announce that Warbirds in Review has received a generous donation of a beautiful Breitling Super Avi B04 chronograph GMT 46 tribute to the Vought F4U Corsair watch. Retracing the celebrated design codes of the Breitling Reference 765 Avi Copilot, the Breitling Classic Avi collection recalls Breitling's earliest ties with aviation from the 1930s onward, when the brand was known for precision cockpit clocks and pilot chronographs produced by its Hewitt Aviation Department. The Classic Avi pays homage to this unique heritage with a highly legible dial, rugged case, and signature rotating bezel that allowed pilots to measure some of the very first long-haul flights. Today, the collection celebrates the pioneering spirit of those early aviators along with 4 legendary airplanes: the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, the de Havilland Mosquito, the Vought F4U Corsair, and the North American P-51 Mustang. This amazing contribution will help Warbirds in Review continue to bring audiences our unique aviation programs that showcase history, heroes, and heritage together every summer. Every aircraft has a history and every pilot has a story. Why does it matter what happened long ago? The answer is that history is inescapable. It connects things through time and encourages us to take a look at those connections. History is the story of who we are, where we came from, and can potentially reveal where we are headed. The team at Warbirds in Review will be offering a very special opportunity to take home this rare timepiece with your tax-deductible contribution through a raffle or auction. Stay tuned.
You know what this is?
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, I had several questions as we ended this program about the program tonight. The constellation, the Bataan constellation, is planning to arrive tomorrow, time to be determined. However, Rod Lewis, the owner of the aircraft, Lewis Foundation that owns the airplane, Rod will be here tonight along with Steve Hinton, who restored the aircraft, Stu Dawson. They will be here at 6:15 for a presentation on the development of their airplane, similar to what you saw here with the beautiful P-47. They will be here tonight at 6:15. The plan is for the airplane to arrive tomorrow. Thank you.
I guess I was fairly apprehensive the whole time that I was flying in combat. And I guess there's good reason to feel that way. I'm there to cause a lot of damage and a lot of harm, and therefore they would like to damage me. And I was 25 years old at that time. Top Gun was really a thrill. I must have done well in actual combat because at the time I was just a lieutenant junior grade, which is a first lieutenant in the Air Force. And so I may have been the very first lieutenant junior grade to go through Top Gun. That was the dream of a lifetime come true. I had wanted to be an aeronautical engineer and a test pilot just like my dad from the time I was 10 years old. STS-27 was my third launch, and it was only the second launch after the Challenger accident. Well, I will never forget we maneuvered the arm, and Mike Mullane was my arm operator, so he moved the arm over there, and we brought up the television image of the right wing, and I looked at what I was seeing, and I said to myself, we are gonna die. To be an airline pilot, there was mandatory age 60 retirement. I was a NASA astronaut until I was 50 years old. And so I looked at the situation, and I had known a number of Southwest airline pilots. And they were just like me. They were flying because they loved to fly. Well, there's a lot of piloting that goes into it, a tremendous amount of piloting that goes into it, because you're going to wind up passing other airplanes. You're going to get in a duel with another airplane that's fairly closely matched. So there's a ton of satisfaction from doing that. And hey, let's just talk about the racing itself. It's fun to fly low, but it's dangerous.
Climbs off all by itself. It does it itself. Okay?
Yeah, you're right there with me though.
Every time I open the hangar door to go flying, I realize that I'm one of the lucky guys doing something that I dreamt of as a kid.
North American Trainer Association, or NATA, is known for bringing warbirds together in a stunning showcase that celebrates human ingenuity and opens the world of military aircraft to future generations. It's the future generations that hold the power of these great birds in their hands, much like NATA member Garrett Fleischman.
You're not just flying in the moment. You're flying with a whole bunch of history on your shoulders, and it really means a lot to fly them.
Bridging history and the future, NATA supports those who remember when and future generations through clinics, scholarships, social media, and a world-class magazine. NATA is a resource for the entire warbird community, and it's open to anyone. Membership can get you access to history in a way you've never experienced before, on the ground and in the air. Without NATA's help through scholarships and regional clinics, the best and the brightest of aviation's future wouldn't have the opportunities they need to soar.
I myself do not own a T6, I do not have the resources to fly in big formation flights on my own, but joining an organization like NATA allows me to do this just because I'm motivated and eager to learn.
The scholarships for future warbird A&P mechanics is a start, but it's the clinics that keep everyone up to date and provide the necessary training and type club support. And to keep the momentum going, there will be even more regional clinics and events in the future. These regional clinics offer an opportunity like no other to learn about flying warbirds in formation and to become a better pilot.
We all share the same interest of being a better pilot, being a safer pilot, and being a better formation pilot.
You join this organization and it's a constant learning process, and that's another thing that I love about it, because a good pilot is always learning. always.
NATA membership isn't just for pilots. It's for everyone who loves aviation, past, present, and future.
We have a lot of members that are not, they're not even pilots. They love the fact that the airplanes still fly, and they share the enthusiasm and the pride that's going on.
It's a place where history comes to life, where the future is sparked by imagination, and where aviation is more than just wings in the air.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day. What else is it for?
I was asked, where do I see NATA going into the future? And I see nowhere but up.
Be a part of it. Join NATA today.
STS-27 was my third launch, and it was only the second launch after the Challenger accident. Well, I will never forget, we maneuvered the arm, and Mike Mullane was my arm operator, so he moved the arm over there, and we brought up the television image of the right wing, and I looked at what I was seeing, and I said to myself, we are gonna die.
How to grow more vibrant flowers. Step 1. Feed them with Miracle Grow Shake and Feed. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow. How to grow delicious herbs. Step 1. Use Miracle Grow potting mix. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow.
About a year ago, I met a gentleman called Walt Fricke, and they had a program called Veterans Airlift Command. And what the purpose of Veterans Airlift Command is predominantly hauling post 9/11 vets with severe bodily injury, post-traumatic stress issues, things like that.
I was a helicopter pilot and was flying gunships when I got wounded. We were leading a gun team, and they were making a combat assault. The slicks are inbound with the troops, and when he fired the rockets, one of the rockets exploded coming out of the tube, and the shrapnel from the rocket took my foot, severed my foot, except for the Achilles tendon. My foot flipped up, and I grabbed my knee, and my foot flipped up and landed backwards in my lap. And then my crew chief, who had also taken shrapnel in the chest, unpinned the seat, laid it down, pulled off his belt, and put a tourniquet on my leg, like a count of 1, 2, 3. And he saved my leg. You know, I spent 6 months in the hospital when I got back from Vietnam, a long way from home. And it was a while before my family could gather the resources to come and see me. And then during that period of time, I was very anxious. I was losing weight, and you know, maybe PTSD and concern about how they'd view me with a busted up body, had a leg that you know we thought I was going to lose, and so that 6 weeks stayed with me. When I retired, I had an airplane, and I thought, you know, I can solve that problem for somebody. And I thought, well, I'll start this transportation service for combat wounded with my airplane. And a friend of mine challenged me and said, you can't keep this idea to yourself. It's, you know, you need to create a national network and do this, and with your connections and that sort of thing, you could probably succeed, in which we have. We have 2,500 volunteers that fly for us, and very few people fly only one mission. Once they do it, they sign up to do more. There are lifetime friendships created out of the flights. It changes their lives.
I've never met a finer group of people. There's not a one of them that has this feeling sorry for themselves, or they don't have a chip on their shoulder about their condition in life, and everyone we've flown has just been exemplary, nice young men. My favorite story of transporting a vet, I reached into the baggage compartment and I grabbed his backpack when we got him back home, and his Purple Heart was attached to it, and it was the first time I'd seen it during the whole trip. And I handed it to him, almost with tears in my eyes, and the young man set the backpack down and gave me a hug and said, Mr. Holt, I never in a million years would have believed I would have flown in a private jet, much less be able to sit in the front right seat on both legs. And he was so appreciative. It humbled me because he's thanking me for thanking him.
We're high on compassion and low on red tape was my beginning mantra, that we're going to build this so that it's easy for them to access, easy for our pilots to access. So we want a very simple, low overhead, clean, effective operation. I traveled to Walter Reed Brooke Army Medical Center, the major touch home points hospitals, and walked the halls and met the families and the guys in their beds and said, when you get ready to go home, you call us, because you don't need to go through fly commercial and go through the TSA and with a wheelchair or prosthetics or a traumatic brain injury or burn victim. They don't need to be hassled by the security if we've got somebody that's willing to fly them, which we do.
World War II changed the world forever, and forever after. The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum of Granite Falls, Minnesota was created as a tribute to the men and women of the greatest generation, whose incredible sacrifices during World War II won and preserved the freedoms we enjoy today. The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum is the dream, the creation, and the passion of the Fagan family of Granite Falls, Minnesota. Ron and Diane Fagan and their sons Aaron and Evan.
We've taken on a mission to connect the latest generation with the greatest generation because these are events in our history that need to be remembered, and in our case, and in the case of young children, they need to be introduced to. And we feel they're very important and need to be preserved, and that's what we're trying to do.
The mission is to preserve the memory of the heroes of World War II, promote patriotism in today's Americans, and inspire tomorrow's leaders to study and apply history's lessons. It's not enough that these beautiful airplanes are collected and restored. The Fagan Museum restores each of them to flying condition.
I think with everything at the museum, having stuff operational is important because people get to see them, how they were used, and get to hear them start up, and it gives people a better perspective of what these machines were capable of and what they look like in the air.
There are no markers, monuments, or visitor centers in the skies above Europe, the Pacific, or the China, Burma, India theaters of World War II. These airplanes are the monuments. They are timeless portals to the courage and deeds of those who gave their all to preserve all that we hold dear. When the museum's airplanes are not flying, they are displayed in 3 hangars: the trainer hangar, the fighter hangar, and the bomber hangar.
World War II was a worldwide conflict, and unfortunately it's not being taught in our schools anymore. But history always has a tendency to repeat itself, so we got to educate the younger generations about World War II. So learn these experiences from the past so you can apply them in the future to help guide this country in the right direction.
I know the buildings are built to last 250 years. The stories that are contained within these buildings will last just as long. We're connecting some of the battles. The only thing we can connect them with are the ground machines, which many people have a connection to rather than the aircraft.
With the museum opening, I started looking into the military vehicles. Started with the Deuce and a Half. The ambulance, when I had that repainted, we made sure that it matched the 4th Medical Battalion. And the 4th Medical Battalion actually were the first ambulances to arrive on D-Day. The ground vehicles all operate fully functional, and we could start them all up and take off and drive them right now.
The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum doesn't just tell the story of what happened. It is dedicated to preserving the stories of those who lived it, telling us how it happened. Veterans and others are invited to the museum to share their stories firsthand. Their stories are recorded and preserved through the museum's Voices of Valor program.
Let's do our museum around my father, Ray Fagan, and his World War II experiences. The first campaign medal he got was Normandy invasion. Second campaign medal he got was Liberation of Paris. And the third campaign medal he got was the Battle of the Bulge. So you can't imagine how terrible it was.
We decided to make our collection a real museum when people referred to it as such. We opened the museum doors directly after our air show in 2012, so the date was June 17th, 2012.
The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum puts its collection in context for visitors by using original murals, sculptures, paintings, photographic collections, and other fine art to tell the story of epic events such as D-Day, June 6, 1944. Someday, sooner than we'd like, the headline will read, "Last World War II Veteran Dies." When that day comes, how will we connect the greatest generation with the latest generation? Restoring these things to their original power and function, and capturing the stories of those members of the greatest generation who are still with us, offers not only a portal to the past, but an immortal connection to America's future generations.
You know what this is? Scott's no quibble, money back guarantee.
If for some reason you're not satisfied, you'll get your money back, no quibbles, guaranteed. I mean, why you wouldn't be satisfied with some of the best lawn care products on the market? I don't know. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, your bar for satisfaction is so high, it's almost unreachable.
I'll track you down to understand what it takes to make you happy. Hypothetically speaking, of course.
Feed it, lawn. Feed it.
One of my earliest memories was flying a J-3 Cub with my dad, and he was letting me fly the whole flight. I was 5 years old, and my dad said, "Okay, let me fly it now." And so I got off the stick momentarily, and then I was bummed because I still wanted to fly it some more. So I was determined, I'm going to fly it some more. So in the flare, I get back on the control stick, and I got my butt thoroughly chewed. When somebody else is flying, you don't ever touch those controls. And so that's why it's been such a vivid memory. It is just a real pleasure and an honor to have you on board today. And I'm sure a lot of people know all about your music career. I'll bet they don't really know about the other side of you, the other side of your career, the other side of your life, the aviation side of it. You have been involved in aviation for a great many years. You and your family, I believe, right?
Yeah, you know, my dad and his two twin brothers kind of kicked it off. They were in Alaska when it was still a territory, flying the bush. After that, for I guess 5 or 6 years, Dad got the jet call and went down to Bainbridge, Georgia, and started instructing Air Force cadets, and in T-28s, T-37s, and T-6s, and then along came old Aileron, and you know, from the first time I put my hands on the controls of a DC-3 at 4 years old. My dad was a captain on DC-3, and as soon as I did that, I knew for the rest of my life what I wanted to do for a living. When I looked out the window and the cars were the size of matchbox cars going underneath me, I was stunned and taken completely. And, you know, as I've said before, is when Dad said airport, I grabbed a hold of his breeches leg and I would not let go. This music thing just came out of nowhere. The energy crunch of the late 70s is kind of what kicked me out of the aviation business, because like you, I wanted to be an astronaut to start with, but looked like that wasn't going to work out. And so I wanted to go to the airlines with the career I had, but that big energy crunch it was a major furlough back in those days, and I just saw I wasn't going to make it, so I turned to music. My daddy didn't like trouble. He came along. Everyone knew him. We'd fight and he'd be home. He never was a hero. Down in shining light. But you could always stand when he don't right. He'd say you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. You've got to be your own.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name. Like the singing bird and the croaking toad, I've got a name, I've got a name. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I love you so, and that is why I need you so. I could die whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream, 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 dream. We didn't even rehearse that.
Call sign down and call sign.